A cold, distant light flickered across the vacuum as the Vraxian armada glided silently beyond the Kalara belt. Each vessel, sleek, obsidian-hued, and humming with concealed power, cut through the inky nothingness like living predators stalking prey. At their helm, Admiral Sarath stood upon the command bridge of the flagship Oblivion's Pride, his bio-adaptive armor subtly shifting to mirror the pale starlight that filtered through the reinforced viewport. The bridge was a symphony of lethal efficiency. Crews of hardened Vraxian warriors, their chitinous plates gleaming with neural interface tattoos, monitored holo displays with unerring precision. Tactical maps pulsed with data, gravity wells, potential defense arrays, and the faint electrochemical signatures of the next targets, a cluster of unremarkable, resource-rich worlds in the outer rim. Confirm orbital insertion parameters. Sarath's voice resonated low and sunken like distant thunder. His crimson optic lenses glowed as they scanned the reports. Lieutenant Carrix, perched at the navigation console, flicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Entry trajectory plotted. Minimal orbital resistance. Atmospheric vectors are within acceptable variance. Good. Sarath inclined his head. Every movement contained power. Once in position, prepare the phalanx of disintegrators. Tonight, we claim another world in our tally. Silent clicks of approval rippled through the bridge. To the Vraxians, conquest was both art and destiny, and the Fallen Quadrant had been their gallery for centuries. Planets had succumbed, their civilizations crushed in elegant displays of force. But tonight's quarry was not yet fully understood. A civilization stirring on the borders of the human domain, rumored to possess fledgling technology far beyond any Vraxian vassal world. As the cruiser slipped around the silvery arc of the first planet's horizon, Sarath allowed himself a moment of reflection. The echoes of former prey haunted him in his dreams, the panicked wail of a world's dying core, the fracturing of crystalline cities under plasma bombardment, the silent drift of survivors lost in space. To the Vraxians, these echoes were a testament to their supremacy, proof that no foe could endure the calculated fury of their armada. Yet tonight, a subtle discord hummed beneath his calm exterior. Reports whispered of humanity's rapid ascent, star drive prototypes, clandestine war fleets, savage independence. The creatures known as humans were unpredictable. They had no single sovereign council, no rigid caste to bind them. They grew strong from chaos, unshackled by the burdens of unity. And in chaos they found innovation. Sarath's second-in-command, Commander Thrall, broke the silence. His antennae quivered with barely restrained excitement. Admiral, preliminary scans confirm. Energy signatures matching terraforming arrays. Graviton research facilities. If we strike now, we cripple them before their true might manifests. Sarath's mandibles twitched. We will not underestimate them. We shall observe one orbital cycle. Study their defenses, their tactics. He turned, fixing his gaze on the vast starfield. We are hunters, not brutes. Precision and patience are our greatest weapons. Below, the planet's surface rotated, slowly. A tapestry of swirling azure oceans and jagged continents marred by scars of industry. Plumes of smoke rose from sprawling megacities. Pale lights winked in desert basins where domed habitats clung to life. It was a world in bloom and on edge, teetering between dawn and catastrophe. Sarath tapped a control stud. Holographic layers peeled away to reveal a three-dimensional grid of orbital defenses, missile platforms, sensor arrays, a thin veil of point defense turrets. Nothing his armada could not breach, yet the balance of power felt unfamiliar, as if the currents of fate were shifting. A soft klaxon pulsed through the bridge. "Command incoming transmission," announced Ensign Vrel, her eyes widening. On the main screen, a jagged audio-visual feed coalesced into the face of a human officer, sunburned, stern, and unblinking. "You've crossed into human territory," the officer said, voice laced with steel. "You are ordered to identify yourselves and state your intent. Any hesitation will be considered an act of war." A ripple of tension. Saroth's hand hovered over the comm panel. To respond with aggression could spark the very war he wished to avoid. To show weakness risked emboldening these upstart adversaries. He inhaled, savoring the moment of decision. Behind him, the Oblivion's pride pulsed with latent firepower. Ahead lay the unknown. Finally, Saroth straightened. "This is Admiral Saroth of the Vraxian Armada. We come in peace for now." The human's gaze hardened, but he did not lower his weapon. "Your peace will be judged by your actions," he replied. Then the screen cut to static. A hush fell over the bridge. Saroth's crimson lenses glinted as he regarded his officers. "So begins our true test," he murmured. "Prepare for close observation. The era of effortless conquest has ended. Tonight, we face a new kind of adversary." As the Armada slipped into a silent orbit, the echoes of countless fallen worlds seemed to grow faint, replaced by the first trembling notes of a greater symphony, one composed by humanity's unyielding heart. In that moment, Admiral Saroth felt the stirrings of something he had never known. Lieutenant Malik sat hunched before the holonet console, claws dancing across ethereal glyphs as streams of raw data spilled into the Vraxian Armada's secure networks. All around him, the Oblivion's pride hummed with life. Reactor cores thrummed, graviton projectors flickered, and servitor drones scuttled beneath the deck plating. Yet in this cocoon of order, Malix felt an electric charge, the buried secret that stoked both fascination and dread. His mandibles clicked as he deciphered each fragment. First, it was the abrupt disappearance of an entire moon base in the Chelon system, obliterated not by plasma barrages but by a precision-directed energy pulse. Then came whispers of guerrilla squads on far-flung colonies dismantling orbital turrets with nothing more than jury-rigged railguns and virulent code viruses. And always, stitched between transmissions, a single identifier. Human. Malix's antennae quivered. He had monitored countless subjugated species, studied their tactics, cataloged their technologies, but never had he encountered anything quite like this. These humans were neither uniform nor predictable. Their ingenuity grew from chaos, like neon vines sprouting through cracked stone. He called up a segmented holo record, snapshots of battered starships bearing crude Earth insignia, smoldering outposts held by ragtag soldiers, and, most unsettling of all, video logs of human diplomats negotiating ceasefires with trembling dignity, even as their allies fell beside them. Each frame spoke of a relentless will tempered by unexpected compassion. "Admiral," Malix intoned, his voice tight, with urgency, "I've decrypted additional transmissions. They've harnessed atmospheric processors 10 times more efficient than our prototype models. Their neural link research is advancing by solar cycle, not decadal increments, and—" He hesitated, antennae brushing together in a nervous tick. "They appear to be aware of our approach." Saroth's crimson eyes perched above the command dais narrowed to slits. Around him, the bridge fell silent. Even the muted hiss of the life support system seemed to pause in deference. "Show me," he commanded. On the central display, Malix projected a three-dimensional lattice of human industrial hubs. Energy tendrils pulsed from geothermal bore fields. Orbital platforms rotated like cogwheels in a vast celestial engine. Overlaid atop this meshwork were tiny, flickering nodes, human reconnaissance drones, networked in a web that reached from surface, bunkers to ion cannon arrays in geosynchronous orbit. They anticipated our orbital vectors, Malix continued. Their early warning grids detected our transwarp signature before we breached the Kalara belt. They've scrambled interceptors to the rendezvous point, speed that rivals our light skimmer squadrons. A low murmur rippled through the bridge. Crew. Commander Thrale, leaning against the bulkhead, let out a soft hiss of disbelief. They aren't supposed to have interstellar drives beyond pilot prototypes, he muttered. Yet here they are, mobilizing faster than we ever managed in the Rythax campaigns. Saroth's mandibles flexed in a slow, considered gesture. They evolve under pressure, he observed. Where we build hierarchies, they build networks. Where we impose order, they cultivate adaptability. Their strength lies in unpredictability, and that is dangerous. At his words, the bridge lights dimmed, shifting focus to the vast viewport. The blue-green orb of Earth, or Centis III as the humans called it, rotated beneath them, its continents marked by radiant nightscapes and swelling storm systems. From this silent vantage, the planet seemed peaceful, innocent even. Yet Malix knew better. On the surface, millions of hearts beat with defiance, ready to repel any invader. He accessed a classified feed, footage of a human pilot's last recorded sortie. The fighter bore cockpit stress fracturing from concussion damage. The pilot's voice crackled over the channel. "This is Commander Reyes of OSS. They're coming through the Vanthra Nebula. Dr. Lin is waiting on the northern shelf. Hold on long enough for her to launch the prototype." The transmission ended as the cruiser she piloted disintegrated under a barrage of energy torpedoes. Yet the nebula's ironclad layers concealed an array of hidden launch platforms. Minutes later, fighters emerged from the gas storms, striking at the attackers' flanks with feral precision. Malix exhaled. Their guerrilla tactics are remarkable. They think in fragments, strike from shadows, and vanish before we can muster a direct assault. Saroth turned away from the viewport, stalking toward Malix with measured steps. Each footfall reverberated like a death knell. "Our intelligence underestimated their temperament," he admitted. "They do not seek domination for glory or empire. They fight because they must, and they fight with every shard of their spirit." Commander Thrall folded his arms, gaze sharp. "What do you propose, Admiral?" Saroth paused, the flicker of starlight dancing across his armor. "We probe deeper," he decided. "Deploy covert observation teams, spectral cloaking drones, not full battalions. We must understand the core of their unity, what drives them, what binds them." Malix bowed. "And if we find hostility?" Saroth's mandibles curled in a ghost of a smile. "Then we adapt. We learn from them. For if the apex of galactic might no longer lies in raw conquest, we must discover where true power resides, before it is too late." As the Oblivion's pride slipped into a silent patrol, its shadow swept across the planet below like a prelude to conflict. In the hush of the command deck, only two truths remained. Humanity was unlike any foe the Vraxians had known, and the hunters themselves. High above the swirling clouds of Centis III, the Vraxian flotilla pierced the atmosphere in perfect silence. 15 sleek cruisers, their obsidian hulls cloaked against human sensors, glided in formation, an arrowhead of death poised above the planet's largest continent. Below, the pale blue-green orb's surface shimmered with life. Endless urban sprawls interlaced with silver rivers and emerald forests. On the bridge of Oblivion's Pride, Admiral Saroth watched through the reinforced viewport as his strike force edged closer. Beside him, Commander Thrall monitored energy reserves. "Disintegrator banks at full charge, Admiral," he reported, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "Railgun fighters primed. We strike in 2 standard pulses. Saroth inclined, his head. Release the vector codes to all squadrons. We will disable their orbital defenses before they even know what hit them. Outside, the cruisers slipped into geosynchronous orbit, ghost ships against the tapestry of stars. A moment later, a fleet of streamlined Vraxian fighters spiraled out from hidden armories within the cruisers' hulls. Their engines whispered through the thinning air as they accelerated toward the first ring of human defense satellites. And then, everything went wrong. Without warning, the human grids pulsed to life. Ionic barriers flared around each satellite, refracting the Vraxian. Fighters' plasma charges. Onboard alarms shrieked. "Shields are holding," Ensign Vrel called out, but her voice trembled. "They've deployed swarm drones." Through the haze of nanoscopic mist, hundreds of darting spheres materialized, each no larger than a fist. They whined past the fighters, releasing miniature EMP pulses that crippled engines and guidance systems. Dozens of Vraxian craft spun out of control, trailing sparks as they plummeted toward the planet. Saroth's crimson eyes narrowed. "Target their drone relays," he ordered. "Unleash the railgun salvo." On the surface, human anti-orbital batteries, repurposed from decommissioned comet mining platforms, ignited with thunderous roars. Tungsten-tipped shells soared upward in arcing trails, each warhead guided by laser beacons baked into desert bunkers. When they struck, they ripped through cloaking fields like scythes through silk. A chain reaction of explosions blossomed across the sky. The Vraxian attack formations fractured under the barrage. Fighters dove in desperate loops. Plasma bolts sizzled against containment fields. Below the chaos, ragged groups of human pilots, launched in battered interceptors, some patched together from centuries-old wreckage, others salvaged from deep space wrecks. Their tactics were brutal but effective. Fly low, dodge behind thunderheads, and ram the enemy with every ounce of thrust. Amidst the carnage, a human voice crackled through the Vraxian comm network, an unauthorized broadcast in a tongue Saroth's linguists had barely mastered. "This is Captain Elena Reyes of the OSS Valiant. You're trespassing in sovereign space. Withdraw immediately, or we will force you down." The raw steel in her voice cut through the Vraxian bridge like a blade. Saroth masked his surprise. With calm. "They have nerve," he murmured. Commander Thrall jabbed a chitinous finger at the tactical display. "Admiral, surface-to-orbit rail beams are charging. If they fire, it will tear through our cruiser's dorsal armor." Saroth considered the tormented silhouettes of his crippled fighters tumbling toward the planet. "Then we draw them out," he decided. "Signal the phalanx formation. Ignite the graviton tether." Below, gravity distortion arrays hidden in the storm belts flared to life, warping localized spacetime. The surrounding clouds writhed as if in pain. A colossal rift of shimmering light opened between the convective columns, an improvised wormhole. From within that rupture, 50 Vraxian warp skimmer bombers emerged, each a sleek missile of destruction. They dove toward the human battleground with grim purpose, but as the bombers lined up their trajectories, the rift behind them collapsed, without warning, sucking one bomber back into the void and shaking the sky like an aftershock. The remaining crafts faltered, caught off guard by the sudden change in gravitic flow. On the bridge, Saroth gritted his teeth. "Malfunction?" he snapped. Lieutenant Carrick's mandibles twitched in frustration. "We pushed the array beyond safe parameters. The collapse was inevitable, but we can stabilize." Saroth cut her off. "No, pull them back. We will not sacrifice more for a single strike." He turned to Thrall. "Abort the phalanx. Regroup at 50,000 kilometers. Initiate cloaked withdrawal." A collective gasp echoed through the bridge. This was the first time any Vraxian admiral had ever called off an attack mid-engagement. Yet even as the command left his mandibles, Sarath felt the weight of necessity press upon him. Moments later, the flotilla slipped away, melting into the void above Centus III. Below, the humans cheered, unaware they had stunned the galaxy's most dreaded hunters into retreat. In the hush that followed, Admiral Sarath studied the planet's fiery glow and realized a profound truth. He had underestimated them. The Vanthra Nebula lay before the Vraxian armada, like a ribbon of living color, tendrils of violet gas weaving through cobalt mists, punctuated by shimmering crystalline formations. Here, obscured by swirling stellar debris, the armada would regroup, repair shattered fighters, restore graviton arrays, and prepare for a renewed assault on Centus III. Admiral Sarath's advisors assured him the humans dared not follow into such chaos. After all, no civilization had ever mastered the Vanthra's deadly eddies. Yet as the Oblivion's pride slipped into the nebula's heart, Malix's console erupted in jagged warnings. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple hyperspace scars, fresh jumps, minutes old, inside the gas clouds." His antennae bristled. "They're here." Sarath's crimson optics narrowed. "Enemy skimmers?" "Far smaller. Their stealth signature is suppressed below Vraxian thresholds. They're targeting our stragglers. Outside, escort frigates and support corvettes drifted in repair maneuvers, hull plates torn or smoking from orbital skirmishes. Suddenly, broadside volleys of electromagnetic slugs tore through their formation. A support corvette convulsed as its hyperdrive stabilizer ruptured. It spun helplessly, beacon flaring red before vanishing in a silent collapse of its jump coil. "Ambush!" Thrail roared, pounding the hololithic rail. "Return fire!" But the nebula's reflective crystalline shards scattered Vraxian energy beams. Each counterblast detonated in a kaleidoscope of light, revealing ghostly silhouettes of human-cloaked frigates darting between gas jets. Their pilots, driven by desperate courage, had mastered guerrilla warfare in the nebula's labyrinthine depths. The armada's response was brutal. Railgun broadsides carved tearing arcs through the mist, and gravimetric charges warped spacetime in explosive ripples. Yet for every human vessel they destroyed, two more slipped from the swirling haze, their micro-EMP mines snaking toward power conduits. One by one, hyperdrives overloaded, hull plating blistered, and the Grand Armada found itself slowly corroded from within. Alarms blared as the Oblivion's pride shuddered. Sarath strode to the tactical viewport, peering into the nebula's depths. "Cut communications to all non-essential channels," he ordered. "We cannot allow them to read our tactics." Malix's claws flew over the console. "It's too late. They're already mapping our patterns, predicting escort rotations, you name it." His mandibles clicked in frustration. Their AI drones have learned from every maneuver, in moments, not cycles. A massive tremor rippled through the flagship. A gravity-pulse torpedo struck just aft of the bridge, shaking the deck plating like an aftershock. Sparks rained from overhead conduits. The holographic display flickered. They were cornered. Sarath steadied himself against the console's edge, senses alive with the charge of battle. "Initiate fallback protocol Gamma," he commanded. "We'll draw them into open space, beyond the nebula's reach, and engage on our terms." Outside, the Armada limped toward the nebula's fringe, trailing tendrils of ionized gas from ruptured shields. Human skiff fighters pursued relentlessly, darting through ruptured gaps in the cloud. Their pilots had named themselves the Apex Resistance, and they fought with ferocity that belied their battered machines. As the flotilla emerged into the void's emptiness, the Vraxian formation snapped into a defensive phalanx. Disintegrator cannons hummed to life, beam lances danced along the horizon, and masking fields shimmered like wavering ghosts. The humans hesitated, momentarily exposed in the open. Seizing the advantage, Sarath ordered a concentrated strike on the Resistance's lead frigate. Gravitic bolts lanced forward, tearing through its aft section. The vessel spiraled away in a bloom of plasma even as its core reactor exploded in brilliant orange flares. But victory tasted hollow. All around, smaller human skiffs closed in under the cover of sweeping ECM bursts. U-shaped drones siphoned telemetry in real time, and an unexpected final blow struck the Oblivion's pride. A long-range antimatter torpedo fired from a concealed boundary beyond scanner range. The flagship recoiled under the impact. A firestorm of cascading failures ignited in its power conduits. Sarath's armored chest plate rippled with the concussive force. He stared at the unfolding chaos. His mighty armada, the scourge of countless worlds now bleeding hull and hyperdrive alike, hunted by ragged upstarts. In that moment, the hunter's arrogance shattered. The Vraxians, cold, disciplined, unwavering, had become prey, and the terror that seized their hearts was a revelation. To be hunted was to confront one's deepest vulnerabilities. Sarath's voice cut through the din. Fall back to rendezvous point Doria 9. Repair what you can. We survive this. Then we learn from them. As crippled cruisers limped away, escorted by plasma-scarred frigates, the nebula's edge glowed with the dying embers of Vraxian pride. In the silent aftermath, one truth echoed louder than any weapon's roar. In humanity's ruthless shadow, the apex hunters had found their greatest adversary, and it was staring back at them with unyielding resolve. A bruised purple haze cloaked the battlefield as the remnants of the Vraxian armada regrouped behind the shattered moon of Doria 9. Cruisers limped on one engine, frigates bore the scars of relentless skirmishes, and interceptor squadrons hovered, at half strength. At the heart of this ragged formation floated the Oblivion's pride, its dorsal hull scorched by antimatter strikes and its command bridge ringing with alarms. Within the bridge's flickering crimson light, Admiral Sarath stood, alone before the main viewport. Below him, the battered human fleet, the Apex Resistance, hovered in cautious formation, their battered vessels bristling with makeshift weapons. Between them stretched the silent gulf of space, pregnant with the promise of final reckoning. Sarath's bioadaptive armor pulsed in response to his mounting fury. He keyed the comm panel, his voice calm and absolute. Prepare the doomsday pulse, target their flagship. When I give the word. His mandibles curled in grim resolve. Fire. Behind him, Commander Thrall hesitated. Admiral, they are fractured and weak. A single volley will evaporate their capital ship and break their spirit. Sarath's optic lenses flared. Then we end this today. No more games. Tendrils of stardust drifted past the viewport as the Vraxian vessels aligned into a serrated pincer. Power cores of the flagship roared to life, charging the graviton emitter into a sphere of collapsing spacetime. The doomsday pulse would render the human fleet nothing but drifting cinders, and secure Vraxian dominion forever. At that moment, a new signal crackled through the comm channels, overriding all frequencies. A clear, unencrypted broadcast in unaccented common. The face of Captain Elena Reyes filled every hollow screen, battle-scarred, resolute, hands steepled across her battered console. Admiral Sarath, she began, voice steady. We know you possess the power to obliterate us. But listen well. Humanity does not seek conquest. We fight to live, to protect our world and our people. There is still time to choose another path. Stand down your weapons, and we will meet you in orbit of Earth. Talk, before we both lose everything. A hush swept the bridge. The doomsday pulse's hum vibrated through the decks, hungry for release. Sarath's heart, hardened through millennia of calculated slaughter, paused for the first time. In the glaring light of inevitability, he saw Not praise, but fellow survivors clinging to hope. He looked at Thrall, at Malix, at the crews whose loyalty had never wavered. Then he spoke, his voice low and cavernous. "Cease fire." The graviton core dimmed. Weapons shutters retracted. The Armada's formation loosened, like fangs withdrawing from a throat. On the main viewport, the human fleet hesitated, and then, in a gesture of mutual relief, Captain Reyes's ship illuminated its forward hull in a white beacon of truce. Moments later, a single Vraxian shuttle detached from the Oblivion's Pride and drifted toward the human flagship. In the silent void, two worlds prepared to meet. In the cold grandeur of Earth's orbital conference station, delegates from both sides gathered beneath towering arches of luminescent alloy. Seroth, imposing in his bioarmor, faced Reyes, clad in a patched flight jacket and the weary strength of countless battles etched on her face. They stood apart, two apex hunters tempered by war, and yet bound by a sudden, fragile understanding. Seroth inclined his head. "You fight with heart," he said, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "I fight with reason. Together we may forge a power neither conquest nor chaos can rival." Reyes offered a cautious smile. "Then let us begin." Weeks later, the blue-green orb of Centus 3 shimmered with new hope. Vraxian engineers and human scientists labored side by side, weaving terraforming vectors into wounded landscapes and rebuilding shattered cities with hybrid technologies. Where once lay smoldering ruins, now stood sleek archives of shared knowledge. The scars of war remained as reminders, but they had become monuments to cooperation rather than conquest. Admiral Sereth walked the streets of New Arcadia, a pavilion of glass and living metal rising in the ruins of the old capital. Beside him, Captain Reyes guided a tour of the city's first joint academy, where human cadets and Vraxian protégés trained together in the arts of negotiation, defense, and exploration. "Who would have thought," Reyes murmured, "that the apex predators would learn from the unlikeliest of prey?" Sereth's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smile. "True apex is not about dominion," he replied. "It is the will to adapt, to grow beyond your instincts. Humanity showed us that." Above them, a new sun crested the horizon, a literal dawn for two civilizations reborn. In the hearts of both species, the notion of supremacy had transformed. Here at the pinnacle, they stood